Please don't mention the word commissions.
Can you hear me? Can I yield my time back to Michael? Michael, seriously, thank you for that. That was great. It was really informative. My name is Doug Atkins, also a lawyer. I am a partner at the law firm Percelli Deegan Tirana. For the last 18 years, I have practiced exclusively commercial property tax law. My law firm is the largest commercial property tax law firm in the state. We have 10 full-time attorneys just doing what I do, just not as good looking. So,
Or as fast.
or as fast, right. I have handled cases from Montauk up to the Niagara area. I have worked on every type of property from diners, office buildings, industrial buildings, condominiums, restaurants, and so on. I've seen a lot. I just wanted to talk to you briefly about the present state of Long Island property tax, Long Island commercial property tax, and a unfortunate, ironic reality of the last 3 years based on real estate market trends. If you have questions while I'm talking, I welcome them. Just raise your hand, and we could have a dialogue as we go through. All right, your property tax bill, and this goes for houses as well as commercial properties. The largest part is schools. Anyone want to guess what percentage of the property tax bill is going to the schools?
87%.
73%.
It depends on where it is, but I have seen as low as 62 and as high as 79. So no matter how you slice it, the great majority of the property tax burden for commercial real estate and for your homes is going to the school district. And I love schools, love teachers. I got 3 kids in public schools. I have a family full of teachers. But the reality is that is where our money is going, and everyone should just be sober and clear-minded about that when you're writing that check for your property taxes. Second biggest component of your real property tax bill is
Police.
Police. So those two, school and police, is going to put you sometimes over 88% of your property tax bill. Everything else is in that last 10% or so: lighting, garbage, snowplow, and so on.
Fire. Libraries.
Fire, libraries. Libraries we usually lump in with the school district taxes because usually they're coterminous. But that's where your money's going. It's going to the schools and the police. On Long Island, we have about 50 or so tax assessing jurisdictions. The one that's in the press the most is Nassau County, but we have other very large tax assessing jurisdictions. Town of Brookhaven, for instance, has tens of thousands of parcels. Town of Huntington, Town of Smithtown, Town of Babylon, and so on. We also have villages where huge sums of money are going through the tax assessor's offices, particularly those with village police departments. Those large villages that jump to the top of my mind are Amityville, Freeport, Hempstead, Lake Success. Wherever there's a village police force, the village taxes are going to be high, and the village tax assessing is going to become very important. Does anyone have an understanding or want to take a stab at what a tax assessor does?
No.
Well, nothing may not be fair. I make my living with lawsuits against tax assessors. But I can tell you they have a very hard job. Their job is not a science, it's an art, it's subjective, and it is basically impossible to get right. A real estate tax assessor, or just an assessor as we call them, their job, among other things, is determining what is your piece of the pie on the property tax burden. This restaurant sits in Nassau County. The Nassau County tax assessor or the Department of Assessment has to determine what piece of the pie this diner has to pay. And when I represent clients, my argument boils down to I think that my client, let's say it's this diner, their piece of the pie is too big. That piece of the pie is should be determined by the value of the real estate. Now, if every single year a tax assessor had to accurately value every piece of real estate, good luck. Good luck. It's almost making my job, I'm not going to say easy, but it gives great arguments to someone like me, because real estate value, whether it's the value of a restaurant or what is the fair lease, what is the fair rent for an office suite on the 3rd floor on Broad Hollow Road, that could be different today than it is tomorrow, than it is 6 months from now, and sometimes by drastic measures. So again, it's an imperfect science, and the tax assessor's job is to annually go through all of these parcels of real estate and assign a value. And not just commercial property, not just houses. We're talking public parks, churches, golf courses, some that are tax exempt, some that are not. Even these tax exempt properties like churches and temples, the real estate tax assessor has to look at those too. And this is where I wanted to talk about what I've noticed the last few years. The housing market, and I looked this up yesterday, the last 3 years on Long Island has gone up, what? Anyone want to take a guess? Yeah, almost dead on. Nassau, this comes from Newsday, which took it from One Key. Nassau, for the last 3 years, was 23% median close price. Suffolk was about 25%. The industrial market, this one I didn't look up, but you're smart people. The last few years, what do you think's happened to the industrial market?
Sky high.
Sky high, right? Paul, what's an example of a market segment that has not gone sky high or has gone down the last few years?
Racetracks.
Racetracks. Definitely racetracks. I heard office buildings over here for sure, particularly Class C or B minus or D office buildings. Retail in our post-Amazon world, and this was well before the pandemic, plenty of these big boxes have survived, but your large shopping center of strip retail, 1,000 square feet, 2,000 square feet, it's not what it was. Sure, we always need barber shops, and we're always going to need coffee shops, but nail salons we need too, right, and pizza places. But we need less of those retail spaces than we did before. Shopping malls, we've seen a lot of them nationwide be hollowed out, be left to die. I could tell you that I have a number of clients that own and operate shopping malls, and nationally that's a story of haves and have-nots. Some shopping malls, Walt Whitman Shops, it's near where I live, they're constantly reinvesting, they're doing very well. Go to Roosevelt Field around Christmas, it'll be hard to find a parking spot, but there's other shopping malls in Long Island and nationwide that are dying. So the tax assessor is supposed to look at all these properties and make adjustments. But the reality is, the great majority of tax assessors are not doing that annually. Most of the tax assessments are staying the same. They're staying the same as they were sometimes going back to the 1950s. So what is the unfortunate reality? The housing market has gone like this. The industrial market has gone up significantly, but a lot of commercial real estate has gone like this or stayed flat. And the real estate tax assessors have not adjusted their pieces of the pie to help your clients. In other words, on all your homes, you should all be paying more, but your clients for their office buildings, their restaurants, and their retail should be paying less. It is mathematically undeniable that to come to a more fair sharing of the burden, house assessments should rise and commercial property should be going down. At least all commercial property, most commercial property except for industrial properties. So my advice to any of you, to tell your clients, pay attention. Pay attention to your tax assessment. If you're in Nassau County or if you're in a village in Suffolk County, you can get 3 property tax bills. You're going to get, in Nassau County, you always get a school bill and you get a general bill. If you're in an incorporated village, you're going to get a village bill as well, so you'll get up to 3. In Suffolk County, you can get up to 2. Look at those. Tell your clients, call you with your tax bill. Let's look at the assessment. Let's look at where that money is going. Maybe you don't feel like paying $30,000 for your small office building should be that much. Maybe you feel like it's fair and you have a good tenant, you have good rent, but very often I see situations like that where the tax bill should be $22,000, not $30,000. It happens all the time. So tell your clients, pay attention. Tell your tenants, even if they're not owning a building, even if they're not going to lease 100% of the building and pay 100% of the taxes, when they're going to take 3,000 square feet of a retail center, they should be asking these questions of their landlord. Are you challenging the taxes? Are you paying attention to the tax assessment? Because your clients, the tenants, are going to pay escalations over a base. So the takeaway that I want you guys all to go home with is that real estate market trends should affect property taxes, but they don't unless you and your clients and all of us are paying attention. If you feel like it's too high, call me, call one of my competitors, and we'll look at the tax assessment and we'll talk about it. The deadlines for challenging these in Long Island, they come fast and furious. Nassau County, it's January. A lot of villages are February. The city of Glen Cove is June. The city of Long Beach is January. So if you're not paying attention on a regular basis, particularly if you have clients who have properties throughout the region, these deadlines pass, and then you have to wait a whole nother year before you can look at it again. Questions? Michael?
When reassessing in the commercial space, are the assessors looking at best use or current use?
Great question. It is not highest and best use. It is what we call status, use, and condition, which relates pretty closely to current use. Okay? So the most extreme example of that would be a desirable piece of vacant land on the corner of Jericho Turnpike, and the highest and best use might be to redevelop it as what? A 7-Eleven with gas pumps, right? And if you look at it like that, maybe it's worth $2.5 million, but that is not how a tax assessor is supposed to evaluate it. He's supposed to evaluate it in its current condition. And maybe its current condition has no land use approvals, no site plan, there might be environmental questions, so it's not highest and best use.
Thank you.
Yep. More hands? Paul?
It's my understanding that approximately 80% of appeals are granted. If 80% of appeals are granted, that means you're 80% wrong. What's wrong with this system and how do you correct it?
Statistics like that, it's normally about Nassau County,
Right.
and it's almost always about residential cases. It's probably very close to true. If it's not 80, it's 79. If it's not 79, it's 82. Nassau County has gotten very aggressive with the residential appeals in settling them or granting reductions prior to it becoming a refund. Because Nassau County feels, if I can resolve this case before it becomes a refund, they are just kind of shifting around the burden, but they won't have to come out of pocket to pay a refund, because Nassau County is in a very unfortunate situation that if they collect $1 of taxes, they're going to give 70 cents of that to who? Schools. And they'll keep 20% for their police department, but they're going to distribute it around to the various taxing jurisdictions within their assessing jurisdiction. But when they have to pay a refund, they got to take that whole dollar and give it back. So the reason why 80% of the residential are successful is because Nassau County quickly settles them before they have to pay a refund. And from the county's perspective, from the perspective of the municipal corporation, it does make sense. And it's an imperfect art. That is why so many of them are defensible settlements. Exactly what we said. Your house might be worth $600,000 today, $400,000 tomorrow, and $1.2 million in 6 months.
So now let's take a case with something like Sunrise Mall.
Yep.
You can't build a halfway decent retail space for less than $250 a square foot, probably closer to $350.
Mm-hmm.
The mall sold for $120 a square foot.
Right.
What's wrong with this picture? Obviously, the highest and best use is not for retail at that location. So what happens now with that? Hey, it's the same bricks and sticks that were there last month. How much is that worth today in terms of the real estate taxes?
That is a terrific question that does not have a short answer, but comes up all the time. Same bricks and sticks this year might be worth something very different. And malls like that, malls like the Sunbet, is that what it was?
No, well, that's another story.
Right, that's another one. Like the Sunrise Mall, they are particularly vulnerable to those long, slow changing market trends, and then all of a sudden it becomes too late to turn back, and then you're just wondering when the bulldozers are going to come in.
Yep.
Or like you and I were just talking about, putting in multifamily in a lot of these places. Because around here we still have a ton of demand for that. Go for it.
The residential taxes are the highest in the nation,
Right.
in Nassau County.
Yep.
And you just said that they should be much higher in order to be fair.
Right.
So where are we going?
Yeah, well, I did say, I used the word unfortunate in the beginning. This was not good news. So, the idea or the concept of having low taxes for homeowners is dead on Long Island, and it's never coming back. As long as we are paying teachers what we're paying them, and I know everyone gets caught up, we have so many administrators and we have so many school districts, and I agree with all those statements, but as long as we're paying teachers what we're paying them, including health care and benefits, your taxes are always going to be high. As long as we're paying the Suffolk County Police Department the salaries we pay, your taxes are always going to be high. I don't think we are ever going back to low taxes on buildings and not on houses either. So either we're going to deal with it or we're going to move to Arizona. That's it. Yes, question.
Yes, so I'm very green on this whole in this space, but my question is, in regards to the infrastructure and the percentage of the assessment, how is that factored in, negating, how the market drives the valuation? Meaning that I would assume that that's a big piece of it also, where there's a baseline just from the cost of what the infrastructure is there.
Are you asking me if, when you say infrastructure, do you mean the cost to build a building, or are we talking about highway infrastructure, bridges?
No, the building infrastructure, given the nature of...
Right.
Yeah.
Right, okay, so I'm not
So
sure
the
if
inert matter of what the property is.
Right.
You're talking about a market-driven valuation and the assessments to that, but there has to be, how does the other piece of it, meaning that this building has X amount of piping,
Right.
amount of...
Right, good question. So there are a few approaches to value: cost, less depreciation, income approach, market approach, or comparable sales. The one that's used the most often and used the most often in tax assessing is the income approach to valuation, not the cost approach. So the cost approach would talk about, what did it cost to build this restaurant? The piping, the roofing, the asphalt, the plumbing, everything. Even if we could find out what it would cost to rebuild this in place and come up with a fair and accurate number, then we have to go into depreciation, because this building, it's not what it would cost today, it's what it would cost less depreciation, and it's almost impossible to do that. So the approach to value that is most widely used for tax assessors and for tax lawyers like me is the income approach. Meaning, if I was a landlord or a hypothetical landlord for a diner like this, or the shopping center across the street, or the office building down the road, what is it worth to me as a landlord? And that is really how we look at it, given market conditions to landlords. Yes?
Isn't the whole concept of taxes that the higher density should create more taxpayers, therefore everybody pays less? So if you look at Suffolk County, for example, 20 years ago, east of 110 was farmland for the most part.
Right.
It's now, you gotta get out past, Riverhead to get into farmland again,
Yeah.
for the most part. All those extra people, all those extra buildings, all those extra shopping centers are all paying taxes. There's not dramatically that many more people, but yet the taxes are dramatically higher, and they're dramatically higher with more people. How does that
More people
reconcile?
means more schools, means more police. means
Right.
Yeah, but
more
not a
infrastructure.
function of,
And
I'll
now they'll put in sewers.
say two things.
they
Two
haven't gotten the
things.
sewers yet.
Two things. first of all, Governor Cuomo's tax cap, which I forget what year that was enacted. Does anyone remember? It's well over 10 years ago at this point.
10 years ago, back at like
Which
2013.
Yeah, yeah. It was, believe it or not, effective at arresting the growth of tax levies. Not law, slowed down the growth of the tax increasing. Prior to that, particularly from the mid-90s up to around 2010, real property taxes were rising anywhere from 5 to 9% a year. And if you do that for 15 years, you end up where we are. The union contracts for schools and the union contracts for police officers have built-in increases year after year. So do we have more people? Yes. Do we have more office buildings? Yes. But the cost of operating our municipalities, including our schools, has gone up. And we will never get back that growth of 5 to 9% a year from, say, 1990 to 2010.
But isn't that the real problem? It's like almost like a nonprofit. If you give me a budget, I'm going to find a way to spend it. Therefore, as you know, each town grows. Everybody's town added 100 houses in the last 20 years.
Right.
That's $1.5 million, $2 million more to the school budget. They've done the studies. 20 more kids are in school. You don't need $2 million for 20 kids. But the government, the school budget said, hey, we can get an extra $2 million. Let's find a way to spend it. Therefore, that's the new budget baseline.
The new norm, right? Yeah, though I don't know.
But how do we break that trend? That's how you fix
I
it.
mean,
Get rid of the mandates.
very slowly get rid of mandates, but really if you were going to break that trend, you would need teachers to make less money.
And police.
And police.
And retirement.
Well, when I say make less money, I'm talking about healthcare, retirement obligations, salaries.
Yeah.
Just, you probably
Yeah.
know this, but New York is the only state in the nation that has what we call the Tri-Borough Amendment.
Right.
And that means that when municipalities or school districts negotiate with teachers in New York State, teachers get automatic step increases. So they have absolutely no incentive to settle. So it just can only go up.
Yeah, I'll give some more explanation on that. So if you look at a teacher's contract, the union contract, it'll have a schedule, and it might be a 15-year schedule. It will say teacher in year 1 makes this, in year 2 it makes this, and so on. And the increases are graduated over the duration of the contract. The Tri-Borough Amendment says even when that contract expires, so maybe the natural expiration of that contract is that it expires in the year 2025. And now in the year 2026, that school district is operating without a contract, right? You've heard this. We've been working without a contract for 5 years. The Tri-Borough Amendment, the law says that the pay increases, the step increases from that contract still remain in effect. The teachers get it. Also, I love that expression, I'm working without a contract. I've been a lawyer without a contract my entire career. No one feels bad for me. But you're right, the Tri-Borough Amendment, particularly as it operated from 1990 up to the mid-2000s, it just blew the wind so much in this direction that the taxes push us to where we are now.
Yeah.
Yes?
One thing that I learned from our county executive after pursuing it for a while was that of the Nassau County budget, 17% of that is something for which we get no goods or services.
Okay.
What do I mean by that? That's the retirement income from people who used to live here, now living down in Florida where there's no tax on their pensions.
Right.
And fully 17% of everything that we have. And when you multiply that times $1 billion and change, that comes out to quite a chunk of change, which is one of the reasons why we have escalated. We're living longer, we're paying those people more. And the old theory, you spend $1 in this community, it's going to cycle through
Multiplier.
7 times. Not if you're spending it in Broward and Dade or Palm Beach.
Yeah, I agree. I would say that's a bit of a cynical view that we get nothing for that 17%. We have good municipal workers working today that 25 years from now, they're giving us services and goods today, and 25 years from now, they will be living off their retirement. So we did get something for it back when they were working, but I agree with the statement you're making. It's a lot.
If they were still living in the
If they
county,
were
they'd
still
be
living here, right?
and helping pay the wages of the people here, but if they're doing it in Florida, it's not.
Right. The only optimistic view I can give you on that is that the compensation of public employees, including health care and retirement obligations, is better for the taxpayer than it was 20 years ago. Still not good, but better. Yes?
I just want to say that I think if anybody here lives with a teacher, if anybody here lives with a teacher, or a police officer, my wife is a teacher, my wife
Oh, you'll have to listen.
Lawrence, and she went with that for about 11 years.
Yeah.
She went with
Yep.
And the other thing is, when you have a dedicated teacher in the family, as you said, you know what they put in. It's
A ton.
It's a bachelor's, it's a master's, it's 94 above the master's, which means it's 24 summers.
Right.
And if there's special ed like mine was, it's from 6 a.m. till 9 a.m.
Absolutely.
every night, and it's 10 months a year, and then in the summer they're in school.
Right.
So, that's all great, and I understand it, but I lived with it from the beginning. I encouraged my wife to go to teaching. So, on the other side of it, you gotta look at this. And the police officers that are out there, and I have friends that are cops, and to come home every night and not to know the wife, or if it's reversed today, it's not something that's easy to learn.
Right. No, thank you for that perspective, because it's absolutely true.
Doug,
And yes.
could you talk about the challenge in terms of whether you want to look at it from the appraisal side or your side when valuing the property, where the rent roll comes into play, and why that's more important on commercial and makes commercial harder versus residential?
Yeah, valuing commercial property is much more difficult than valuing a house. Valuing a house, you're looking at comparable sales. A shopping center is a very instructive example to answer your question. I'm handling one now, and at one point, it had a Kmart and a supermarket and about 15 retail spaces. And you look at the rent roll every year over the last 15 years, and there was a time 15 years ago when to that landlord, times were good. They were flying high. What happened to Kmart? Not there anymore, right? So now you have a tenant that maybe was 90,000 square feet, and it's gone. And replacing a 3,000 square foot tenant is one thing. Replacing a 90,000 square foot tenant is an entirely far more difficult problem. And tenants like that, large spaces, they don't just move in and start operating. They're going to rehab the entire place. So we do look at the rent roll. We do look at the expenses every single year. For rented properties, for multi-tenant rented properties, it is the main thing that I am talking to tax assessors about. Look what happened. Look what happened post-COVID. Look what happened that when the tenants came back in 23, yes, they came back, but they're not paying $30 a square foot anymore. They only want to pay $22 a square foot. The restaurant tenants, filling in those spaces. As Paul was just explaining to me, the cost of labor in restaurants, the cost of labor in general has gone up significantly. So the tenants don't want to pay as much in rent as they were in 2015.
They can.
They can. Maybe industrial spaces can, but a lot of other spaces cannot. Any other questions?
Great. Well, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Excellent points of view. We